Close to 3 weeks after the New York activist short seller Hindenburg Research released its bombshell investigation report alleging that Gautam Adani, then the world's third richest man, had pulled off what it called the largest con in corporate history, the huge stock market disaster has now firmly entered a political phase. Given Adani's close ties with Prime Minister Narendra Modi personally, the allegations of a variety of fraudulent practices have deeply shaken India's politics, with the opposition parties relentlessly attacking the Bharatiya Janata Party government generally and the Prime Minister individually. With India's parliamentary elections in 2024 on the horizon, the run up to them in the next 1 year or so is expected to be dominated by the story of the Adani debacle. To get a perspective on the story, Mayank Chhaya Reports spoke to two seasoned journalists, Shrikant Modak, a Mumbai-based veteran of business and economic journalism, and Kajal Basu, a Kolkata-based veteran of data journalism. The two explain the underpinnings of a crisis that has wiped off over $110 billion in public and institutional wealth, with some grave spillover effects on India's economy. Shrikant Modak and Kajal Basu.
All right. We are about 2 weeks from the day when Hindenburg Research released its bombshell report. We are pretty much what I think in the political phase of the disaster. How do you view the political implications of the allegations and their economic aftermath?
The political implications are still unfolding. As we've seen today, over the past couple of days, Parliament has been pretty much brought to a standstill by the opposition demanding that, that they have a discussion with Adani. And Modi, when he retorted to Rahul Gandhi's speech, he didn't make mention of Adani even once, which essentially means that the government is not going to talk about Adani, whether you like it or not, So I don't think the opposition is going to stop harassing the government, going to go after the government. It's not going to stop that, And this is going to grow because the implications of the Hindenburg report have just barely begun. It's not as if a great deal of time has gone by, and things are going to settle down into investigations into the Adani group, and not just investigations in India. They've also started, but investigations abroad. So there are vast implications to all this, and things are not going to die down now. Secondly, the general elections are coming in 2024. It's to the opposition's advantage to keep everything alive, and they will. And they will.
You're talking about investigation. Do you seriously expect any credible investigation to be mounted in India?
No, I don't. No, I don't. I really don't. I mean, although today I think the Supreme Court has thought about the possibility of setting up a panel to investigate the charges against Adani, against the Adani group. Personally, I don't think very much is going to come of it. Purely because, as you've said, the implications are vast and they could be disastrous for the government. So I really don't think that very much is going to come of this. There will be.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Sorry. So what I was saying is that the media is playing the role of defending both the government and Adani together. But the government itself hasn't really come out against Adani, or hasn't even said that it's going to do anything about it. So the battle is going to continue for quite a while now.
But given his track record, don't you think Prime Minister Modi will just brazen it out?
He is. I think that's exactly what he decided to do. Like the speech yesterday that he gave, there was nothing new in it. In point of fact, Modi hasn't said anything new in the past 7 years. He hasn't said a single thing that's new. He repeated the old tropes of Nehru, and he repeated the old tropes against the Gandhi family, and it went on and on and on and on, reprising what he's been saying for half a decade now and more. So yes, the signal that he sent here is, you can go on trying to get some words out of me about Adani or against Adani, which is even worse, because he won't do it. But he's not going to do it. He's not going to say a thing. And that was very obvious today.
And I think somewhere along the line, he seems self-assured that come 2024, and this will be a forgotten story, like all these corporate scandals normally are. That's India's history. People do not remember these things very well, nor do they care enough to make an electoral choice on the basis of that. That's my understanding, having seen it from the time of, say, Harshad Mehta, for instance. It was a
Yeah, yeah.
similar, comparable story, essentially using public money to manipulate the
Well, not this
market.
large. Yeah, not this large, except not this large.
True, but
This
it,
is
in the context, then it was fairly large.
Yeah, yeah. Except that now the story is so gargantuan. I mean, the Adani Group controls so much of India incorporated space, and even the GDP. That this is not going to die. And like I said, the story has just begun. It's not. It's nowhere near the end. I mean, a lot of people are rejoicing that at the stock market, some of the Adani Group companies are showing signs of revival or signs of beating back the tide. And I just say that this happens all the time. This happens all the time. You get hit, you bounce back, and then when the tsunami really hits, when the what I would call the lateral investigations abroad, when they come into the picture, when money starts going out again from the Adani Group companies, then it's going to hit again. This is nowhere near a peak point. It's not as if the Adani Group is reviving or showing any signs of revival. It's not. You don't recoup 110 billion dollars that you've lost over the course of 8 sessions. You do not recover it in eight more sessions. So this is huge, and this is going to stay. And
Uh,
it is, whether we like it or not, going to become the fulcrum of the opposition's campaign, electoral campaign for GE 2024. And nothing
uh,
that Modi can say or do is going to reduce the impact of this.
but which country outside India, or who would be interested in carrying out serious investigations into this? I mean, I
It's
don't
not
see the US
countries.
getting into it in any significant way.
It's I don't think
Or,
the governments
yeah,
won't.
go ahead.
Governments won't. It's not that the governments are going to start investigating Modi. They're not. It's the institutions, the financial institutions, because they are the ones who suffer. It's the major financial institutions that are going to start rolling back the ball, about investments in Adani's, throwing up warning signals, throwing up red flags. It's already been done by various financial institutions, and it's going to continue. So it's not governments. Governments will not intervene in this at all. Like for example, the U.S. government very rarely takes it upon itself to talk about hyper corporates in America. It does not as a point to be made, but nor will it grab the opportunity to take down another hyper corporate in what is considered a friendly country. It won't. So this is not government to government. This is financial institutions to a hyper corporate in India. That's the way it's going to
Yeah.
work.
Beyond whether the Indian and international law enforcement and regulatory agencies will seriously investigate the Hindenburg findings, there is the larger question of how the research firm came to access such an extraordinary trove of data about the Adani Group's overseas dealings. Gautam Adani himself, as well as his supporters, have claimed that this is an attack on India, the implication being that forces inimical to India's economic and diplomatic rise are behind this. MCR asked Shrikant Modak about a piece he wrote touching upon some of those themes.
in your counterpunch piece, something really jumped out at me, and I'm quoting you here. It says an operation as complex as this could not have been completed without the goodwill of an intelligence agency of a powerful country, which has controlling stake in the global financial infrastructure, unquote. We can all guess what that intelligence agency could be. Now, this is going in the area of sort of larger intrigue, larger conspiracy that some of other people have alluded to, and it, in a sense, plays into what Gautam Adani himself said, that it's an attack on India. What? Why do you say what you said here?
Well, I'm not saying that Gautam Adani, first of all, this is not to absolve Gautam Adani actually, because the findings of Hindenburg, they look authentic, you know, and the questions which they had sent to Adani to reply, they have not got the satisfactory answers. So which shows that they have something to hide actually. You see, so there is a meat in what the Hindenburg report has produced. Actually, you see, has reported
Right.
actually. So, and if all that is true, then the action, like for example, transfer pricing, if they're transferring a lot of money, you know, or if they're laundering a lot of money, all this investigation, based on this circumstantial evidence, there is a need to do investigation in India and uh, and find out the activities of this company actually, especially the sources of their funds which come from abroad. Because a group like as large as this, it has implications at a national level. Okay?
Right.
And that way, there have been other houses also, like uh, Ambani's and then Tata's, Birla's. There's a whole history of that actually.
Right.
But till today, nobody has felt necessity to get behind them actually, see, behind their operations and try to expose them. The fact that that there has been a 2 years now this 2 years period during which this operation is taking place, it suspiciously also coincides with the geopolitical emerging geopolitical scenario, where the confrontation that's the period which is the pivots towards east and towards Russia and the China begin actually, see, of the
Right.
west, the NATO countries actually led by US. And in that, as far as China is concerned, India has already said that is on board with the NATO, with the US, you can say actually, with the Quad, in fact, which is the
Right.
Eastern version of NATO.
Yeah, it's Australia, India, Japan, and the
That's
US.
right. So, so there it is already on the board. So that is not really an issue. More pressing issue at this moment is Russia, actually. See. And there, India has not shown very has maintained an independent stance. Now, and then this is one side of it, actually. See. The other side of it is that there are a lot of things which have started happening which pertaining to India. For example, there's an invitation for a state visit in
Yes.
summer
For the
for
Prime Minister, yeah.
the Prime Minister. Okay, and then Then just before that, actually, this was announced. There was BBC documentary came out of 2003 Godra riots,
Right.
and then statement by Newland. So in this whole scenario, somebody who is very close to the Prime Minister and who has played a very major role in his rise, at least bankrolled him, his political activities, backed him right to the hilt, and that relationship is very strong. And so, uh, in so in this geopolitical game, uh, Adani happens to be the weakest link.
Uh-huh.
Weakest link. The BBC kind of documentary and all that can tarnish his image internationally, but it cannot have the. It does not have so much uh, purchase in India. But the group like Adani, which has a huge investments, which has a huge borrowings, and where very large proportion of investors are there. Actually, Indian investors are involved. Actually, in investments of many mutual funds and bank loans have gone there, and so that has a potential. This is the weakest link,
Uh-huh.
and it has a potential to create a real major upheaval.
Society.
Yeah, that's a major upheaval. Actually, you see.
Right.
And that is how the geopolitics operates.
So, I mean, what you're telling me is that number one, that both can exist independently in the sense that while Adani's may have been engaging in all this, at the same time, the Hindenburg research
Hmm.
could also be part of a sort of a
You see,
larger plot to.
that's
Uh,
right, because you see the international. If you see their shell companies, their transactions, even to get a whiff of it,
right.
the extent to which it is, they have come out with the exact figures actually. See, and these figures are these are through the financial system, banking system, financial system, SWIFT, and all that
So they
actually.
wouldn't have had access to it unless they had some kind of.
Yeah, so unless they have they have support
I
for their
see.
activities from powers that be at a global level, they won't actually see.
Yeah. No,
So that's why it creates, together with the things, and also what Victoria Newland has said,
right.
and her background and her history with Ukraine, we all know that she has been very active actually
Hmm.
in this geopolitical strategies. So that creates suspicion because she has given a statement saying, in the Congress saying that that was just 3 or 4 days back that we are working with India to get them to see, and now getting them to see
Yeah, it's a
our
curious
point of view
construct. Yeah.
is a way of saying actually that we are arm twisting them actually, in a
Yeah,
diplomatic
sure.
language. That is what one guesses that is what
Right.
it goes to
No,
actually.
so your point that I see from your piece is that through the weak link of, say, Gautam Adani's enterprise,
Hmm.
the idea is to perhaps create a situation where the prime minister feels domestically weak and therefore compliant to external pressure.
To
Uh,
prepare a ground for his visit to White House,
yeah,
where he can be entertained as well as you know uh, and one doesn't know actually because what how he uh, uh, whether he how he is going to. These are the hints which have been given to him.
right.
Hey, look, you are coming, but we all these things are happening at the same time. So these are signals that you mend your ways and come on board. If he comes on the board,
Yeah.
my guess is that then well and good. But uh, if it does not come on the board, will this state invitation stand actually? Because they can always
Y-
find wriggle out of it.
Yeah,
And
but I think
if it stands, then there'll be some stern messages along with
yeah,
it.
they'll extract their pound of flesh. But my point is, given his temperament, he
Uh,
suddenly says, "Listen, guys, thus far and no further. I may have problems domestically, but I'm at the end of the day prime minister of a great democracy. I'm not going to yield to what you're
no,
saying. If that happens, how do you think the Biden
will
administration
that
might handle
happen? That is what I'm questioning actually. See, because the impact of Adani's, uh, uh, it has shaken up at the moment, it has shaken up the,
it? Indeed,
but deflate, all these share prices are deflating as many of their important companies, they have deflated by 50% actually, you see, and less important by around 20%, which is not a small,
no,
and that has an impact on the whole financial sector.
indeed,
And if you shake up the whole financial sector, then there is a major upheaval in the system.
and
And
that
then
too this close to 2024 election, right?
that's right. And then again, you see, 24, uh, uh, again, their bonds, international bonds, as and when they become due, they will not be rolled in normal circumstances. Actually, if the companies make a request to roll them over, they do actually, you see, roll over. Uh, but uh, but uh, uh, but when some of them are becoming due in 23 and some of them are becoming due in 24, actually these are very crucial periods.
Right.
So will they be rolled over? These are
Yeah.
all, you see, these are we are in a world, geopolitical world, where the wars, where uh, the battles are fought at various levels actually. See, apart from the hot war, there are also other ways actually in which you can manipulate things.
Sure,
And
indeed.
uh,
No, Prasad, it's interesting that you should advance that argument because, say, if I were in part of the Adani enterprises, and if I read the piece that you've written,
mhm,
am I handing them an argument that they didn't think of, and
mhm.
in their attempt to get out of the sordid mess that they are in? How would you look at something like that? They would say, listen,
They,
even
that does not absolve them of all the allegations which Hindenburg has made. Okay,
right.
Hindenburg has done a lot of homework. It's a different matter that it may have been helped by some external
Right.
political forces, actually, you see. But they have done and they have prepared the whole ground for it, actually, you see.
Yeah.
So these are not challengeable. What they have done
Right.
is, I mean, that is my guess, okay.
Not true. True. Yeah. What does it tell you about India's much ballyhooed corporate world that one upstart activist, short seller rather, with a staff of barely five, can bring a giant down? I mean, I'm quite baffled by that. Just 5, 8 people.
It's amazing.
And,
It's amazing. It's quite.
in that context, sorry to drag it a bit. Our friend Shrikant Modak's contention that an investigation of this detail in this complicated areas couldn't have been done by Hindenburg without some help from an intelligence agency. What do you think of that?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I know Shrikant holds this point of view, but I'm not one with him over here. I think it was, if anything, I mean, short sellers, for example, are not bought over by intelligence agencies, or they do not, at least not in America. I've never known it to happen. And it's not just with Hindenburg, it's with any other short seller over there. Um, So it's very likely that there was backing, there was financial backing. But then the point is, Hindenburg does have financiers. It does have investors. It's not Anderson alone who's going to make a pot of money out of it. A bigger pot of money is going to be made by the investors, and Anderson is merely going to take a cut of that. You know, but
Right.
more to the point, there has been. It's not that there haven't been investigations in India. Poranjoy Gotakota, he did a story. He did a series of stories on Adani in the EPW and before.
I remember.
I
Yeah.
know he's got tons of material on Adani, just as he has tons of material on Ambani. He was shut down by just by a mere judicial stratagem, court cases. You know, and the thing is that he did meet Adani thrice to try and settle the ban that the courts had put against, and the ban against him is still working. He can't speak about Adani at all. You know, he can't
I
make any
see.
insinuations. He can't. So it's not that Adani has not been investigated before by journalists in India. He has been, but they've all been shut down.
Yeah.
Now, what Hindenburg did a far more forensic job of it. Most of the stuff that they have, not all of it, certainly not all of it, not going by what I've read in the report. Not all of it is in the public domain, but most of it is in the public domain. What Hindenburg has done is just joined all the dots, connected all the dots. And then, of course, they've got inside information from, I don't know if it's a whistleblower, I don't know whether it's a competing hyper corporate or a competing corporate, but it's got information from somewhere. So no, I don't. It's not a political attempt to bring down, to hassle Modi or via one of his funders or via one of his crony capitalists. It's not that at all. I
But do you seriously think that a group like Hindenburg would be motivated by morality? I mean, their agenda is not moral at all. I mean, they are perhaps doing a hatchet job for someone else. It's entirely conceivable.
Well, it's. I think it's a little more complex than that. I don't think Anderson has ever said that he's going into this because of the morality of it. He's become a short seller because of the morality of it. He just doesn't want people to be ripped off, investors to be ripped off. And that according to the report. I think the story was written last year in the New Yorker, where they did a profile of the man, and in which he was very clear. He said the stock market, what he saw of it, has turned into a casino where a lot of innocent people get hit, where there's a humongous amount of skullduggery going on. So he started out as an investigator with possibly a certain moralistic background to it. But then he also found that, well, I can make money out of it too. You know, I don't have to do this as someone who's entirely broke all the time and who's
Yeah.
begging for money from other people. You know, I don't have to do that. I can make money out of what I think is wrong in the industry, and at the same time be a yardstick of what might be honest in the stock market, what could be honest in the stock market. You know, uh, I know a lot of people talk about short selling being, being a cynical game, and short sellers being um, dead cynics. You know, they just want to make money. But I don't think it starts there. I don't think that's the entire story. You know, my point is, why shouldn't he make money? After all, he's making money out of speaking the truth to someone, to the public at large, and making money out of what happens thereafter. It's not that he's pulled down anyone who doesn't deserve to be pulled down. It's not that Anderson has been telling lies. He doesn't lie. I've read that report. The report is spot on, you know. And being journalists, I think we both of us can figure out.
No,
You
true,
can see,
true.
connections, you can see nodes, you can see dodginess. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
um, so it's it's very likely that he got investors in to this story 2 years ago when he started investigating it, and just 2 years ago,
Right.
when he started investigating it, he did get investors in. I don't know if any of those investors were Indian.
To broaden a bit, it's. I was just thinking about what motivated him. Like we said, morality is not a factor here. But at the same time, the simple fact is that if he thinks there is something wrong going on with the way the Adanis have conducted the business. He did choose to profit from that as well. I mean, I find it a bit strange that on the one hand, you are shocked by the kind of practices that you accuse the Adanis of, and then on the other hand, you make money for yourself. It's a strange disconnection to me.
Short selling is an accepted market practice.
No, fair enough. What is legal is not always
No, I don't think
aesthetic
this.
to me.
No, personally, I see nothing wrong with this. In the sense that let's look at it that one way. He spent a lot of money in doing this investigation. I seriously think he did. He spent a lot of money doing this investigation. Now he couldn't have got this money unless he asked his investors for money. Now the investors want something back in exchange for the money that they gave him. They want something back, and they want something more. That's the way it works. Either I'm personally not in love with the stock market. I frankly find it a bit of an extremely cynical exercise. But as long as we live within the scope of the stock market, within the shadow, under the shadow of the stock market, there are some behaviors, there are some actions that we have to see as being completely in tune with the stock market itself. And I think short selling is that.
Why do you think aggressive businessmen like Adani, for instance, even Ambani, or before that, like I said, Harshad Mehta, who was a predatory stockbroker, how are they able to co-opt institutions such as the LIC, or it used to be the Unit Trust of India during Harshad Mehta's time? There has to be something odd about the top leadership of these institutions to be so willing to cough up thousands and thousands of crores of rupees on the basis of what often seems like a rather dodgy promise.
Yeah, I mean, in the sense that I'm pretty clear about one thing now, that is that all these institutions knew exactly how over-leveraged and overvalued Adani is. Then again, you've got to look at the fact that Adani has very, very close connections with the PLO. There's no doubt about that. I don't know if you've seen that photograph, that rather telling photograph of Modi waving from the Adani plane.
It's an old picture. It's a very old photograph. I saw it almost as soon as it came out.
It's 2014, I think a 2014 photograph. It's during his campaigning. But that single photograph personifies everything that we think is wrong with the copper political nexus. I mean, you can see the nexus right there. You can see the copper political nexus. You can see quid pro quo right there. You can see corporate funding of elections right there. So the thing is that what do these institutions, these PSUs, what do they do if they get orders from above saying that you've got to loan this man money? And this man has so overinflated his group's evaluation that there's really no ground for them to refuse him more money. It's in the sense that, okay, he's been returning money, he's been returning loans fine, without demur all these years. He's been dribbling them back into the pockets where they came from. So obviously he's a safe bet. Plus his evaluations are so high, but the point is his evaluations are over evaluations. Now that's one thing that it's impossible to consider that these people did not know about this. Of course they knew about it. These are not dumb economists. I mean, these are mavens of the economy. So it's a combination of two: orders from above, a very clean balance sheet, and you loan out more until the point comes where you believe that, oh hell, this guy is too big to fail. Well, the point is, are the guys who are too big to fail also too big to bail? That's my point.
Interestingly, I had interviewed Harshad Mehta at his so-called fabled apartment in Worli. And he found out that I'm also from Rajkot, where he was from. So he immediately lapsed into Gujarati. And the reason I'm making this point is he was absolutely 100% confident that had there not been intervention from the investigative agencies, he would have returned every single penny that he got from all these institutions. He said that's how the market is played. You cannot bring in morality into it. This is a game. You're looking at it from a moral standpoint. I'm looking at it as a game. And I would have won this game had you not screwed around with my plans. That was his point of view, which is a sociopathic, cynical point of view, but that's the nature of the business. How do you look at a logic like that?
No, the thing is that on the one hand, there is this is you call he calls it a game. It's like Gulli Danda, Pittu, and so on and so forth. It's a game. It's got its own rules that might not be the rules of the market, but hey, it's a game that I'm playing. I make the rules because I'm the big fish inside there. The point is, in the Adani group, in the Adani fiasco, the rules were not legal. They're extra legal. The rules that he was playing by are extra legal. There was round tripping. There is shadow FPIs. You know, um, so the point is that when you have these kind of rules being followed, and those are rules only for himself, they are not the rules for the rest of the market. The rest of the market follows rules and protocols set by SEBI, set by other institutions that are supposed to be overseeing the stock market. But he didn't follow any of that. He's not been following all that. I mean, over evaluations, all the money that's been coming in, all the money that's being played now as we speak, is also questionable. I mean, I think if you would have spoken to financial journalists in Delhi and all that, I mean, you would know that the buying spree that is going on now, and that is pushing up the percentage points bit by bit, the points bit by bit in the stock market, where even though that money is questionable, the source of that money, the provenance of that money is questionable. So the point is that you can say that you're playing the game and it's my game and I make the rules, so I will play by it. You don't have morality, I'm not moral. It just doesn't sound right.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's about people not losing money. That's how they approach this whole thing. I mean, I'm telling you seriously, Harshad Mehta, I keep coming back to him because he was emblematic of that kind of thinking in those days. He genuinely had no sense of wrongdoing. He was really not troubled by what he was doing as long as he paid every single penny back. Adani could turn around and argue the same way that I paid back every loan that I took until this exploded in my face. Had this not happened, I would have happily continued. Everybody would have made money. I'm just playing the devil's advocate to see
No,
if
I'm
I
not
can
sure that.
get some rise out of you.
Oh, I'm not. I mean, no, you won't get a rise out of me. But the point is that again, the game is fixed. It's a fixed game. We all to all these guys who are making money hand over fist. Adani's game. It's a fixed game. The more money you make, the more money you make. It's as
Right.
simple as that.
Yeah.
And there are people who are losing all over the place. The people. A friend of mine, he lost 3 lakhs in 2 days.
Yeah, I read
Okay.
that. You had
Yeah.
mentioned that
Yeah.
in one
That
of your
one
posts.
that I had written. Yeah. He lost 3 lakhs in 2 days. Now, the thing is that he's not okay about it. He's brave. He's sort of braving it through. But the point is, there are people who've lost tons of money. And in that, you can count pensioners, you can count old people, you can count women, you can count the infirm, you can count anyone that you want. Anyone who's playing in the stock market not to make a killing, but to have something to fall back on. Now they've lost money. Okay, the institutions haven't lost money. The lenders haven't lost money. The creditors, not many of the creditors, most of the creditors haven't lost money. They are now losing money, but they didn't until the Hindenburg report came out. But that's not the metrics that we are considering. I mean,
Right.
the stock market is not, at the end of the day, Anderson might say it's a casino because it is a casino, but it's not supposed to be one.
Yeah, but
You know?
that argument applies to all stock markets across the world. There's nothing unique to. I mean, it's possible that the Mumbai stock market is uh, far more manipulated than many, but by and large, everything is a scandal when it comes to this kind of. I mean, look at the U.S. for instance. There have been serious conversations about how all these lawmakers, be it senator or a congressman, congresswoman, there is so much of insider trading because these are the guys who make the rules and laws, and then a lot of them have benefited from that. I think I have a problem with the way we, as a race, human race, has come to define morality, because morality, the way we have defined, has not worked at all across the board. So why are we so
I mean,
stunned by what the Adanis are accused of?
no, I'm not even talking about morality of the thing. It's not that. It's even if you look at it financially, okay, it's not a level playing field. It's not a level earning field. It's not a question. The stock market or companies or big companies is not only about taking loans and being able to return loans. That's not the way it is. It doesn't stop there. It doesn't stop. They take loans, they build something out of it, and they return the loans, and then they take more loans and they build something more out of it, and then it doesn't stop. That's not the stock market. That's not the stock
Yeah,
market. That is business in a certain sense. But you've got to, I think we need to have a different vision for the stock market itself. One that plays by rules that do not rob people who are there just to make a living or a fallback lose all the money that they have. And
right,
this is, in some fundamental sense, even in the Adani Group companies, with so few free float shares, you
right.
know, millions of people are going to get hurt. Millions of people have got hurt. I mean, the number of single investors in Adani is 3 million in the Adani Group. Okay, even if you consider a third of them getting hurt, I think a lot more have been hurt because these are single
Right.
investors. A
Yeah,
lot more have been hurt. That's a huge figure. That's a massive figure, and that is a figure that no one takes into account when they write alleging economics or when they write analysis and so on and so forth. You know, the stock market is
that's
not
true.
supposed to hurt 2 million people. It's not
Yeah,
supposed to hurt 2 million people. So that's my fundamental to what is going on today. You know, Even now it's being played at a stratospheric level of, oh, it edged up a couple of points, or it edged up 5 points. Look, they're back in the game. Back in the game. You've broken so many banks, personal banks, the little banks that people have in the home, you know, the money that they've taken out of the mattresses and put into the stock market. Why? Because of the COVID. For 2 years, you had no earnings. There were people who were not making any money at all, so they rushed towards the stock market and put it there and said, "Okay, we'll get something back from there." They've been hurt. They've been impoverished. Now,
yeah.
if you don't think about them,
Yeah, but they are never thought about in any system like this. I'll give you a small example. I come from Ahmedabad, a city which is bursting with investors. Everybody invests in Ahmedabad. It's in Ahmedabadi's bloodstream. Growing up, I used to hear this joke that if a major stockbroker has diarrhea, the stock market will crash. That's how uh, how capricious this whole system is.
yeah,
So
yeah.
people should have known about that. That it's a rigged system across the board. It has always been. So why is anyone surprised by this?
Because I don't think people. We're talking about people, the investors in the stock market, the individual investors in the stock market, is not very well informed, is not an analyst, is not an economist. Unlike us, the individual investor does not dig into stuff. The individual investor does not have a habit of going onto Google or trying to connect the dots. Those are just traders. Those are day traders. They do that. That's part of their living. That's part of how they make their money. But the individual investor who invests in a company like the Adani Group or a group like the Adani Group, then tends to sit back, go into the bedroom, sit back, relax, put the feet up, and say, okay, it's going to multiply. It's going to keep getting me a certain amount of stuff every month for me to make a living. I
Right.
can float on that. I can get by on that. So the point is, that being the case, and we can't expect everyone in the market to be an expert analyst. It doesn't work that way. Okay, there have been reports over the years about how overblown Adani is, how overevaluated he is. But how many people know exactly what overblown means, or what it entails, or being over leveraged and what it entails? It doesn't. And here is where I think the overseeing organization, institutions in the country, SEBI and the rest of it, they failed. They failed miserably in warning people about which way Adani was going to go. It's
But
their
that was
business,
willful
for
failure,
heaven's sake.
right? It's not out of incompetence. They just chose to fail.
Yeah, they did. And that's my grouse too. I'm not calling them incompetent. I don't think SEBI is incompetent. I just think that it was complicit, or these institutions which are tasked with overseeing India Incorporated, they were not incompetent, but they were complicit in how this thing
Right.
went down.
Yeah.
You know,
Just
and that's
yeah.
my grief, because these people who were complicit are not going to be brought to task.
No one will be brought to task. I mean, it never happens, generally speaking. What do you see long term now, post this debacle, in terms of foreign investment into India, and therefore, by implication, its impact on the economic growth in the next 5, 8 years? Because people are going to view everything from India with a great deal of suspicion now.
They will, but I think what overrides all concerns at the moment of financial institutions abroad is the fact of the mammoth size of the Indian market.
Right.
Okay, that overrides all concerns. That overrides all liberal concerns, all moralistic concerns, just about everything. They
Yeah.
look at the size of the market and they start salivating. And the
Yeah.
moment you start salivating when you look at the market, you've lost any kind of ethicality that you might have had when you took a look at the
Yeah.
market. That's gone. So I
Yeah.
don't think it's going to impact India's growth story. If there's the growth story is also fictive. A lot of it is fictive. It is not going to impact it massively, but yeah, it will impact it. There's no
Yeah.
doubt about that.
So, in the final analysis, it will be just one company that screwed up.
No, I don't think so. I think there are a lot of companies. What I hear is that there are a lot of companies that are looking at themselves anew. Companies that might not be entirely above board. They are at least examining the possibility of being investigated
Hmm.
and revealed in the open market, which frankly Adani might be able to override it. He's a hyper corporate, but a lot of corporates won't. So I
Right.
think there might be a fallout of this that is positive in a certain sense, because or it could be even more negative. I mean, people could become better at hiding stuff and
Right.
at dissing the rules, or they could just become better.
True.
You
Yeah.
know, it could
Yeah.
go either way.
And to conclude, this threat of suing Hindenburg is interesting in the sense, Hindenburg's counter is that go ahead, we will demand discovery. Now, discovery is something which is remarkable in the US.
Yeah,
If they insist on discovery, I don't think Adani would be able to offer everything they
no,
have as part
no,
of the discovery. So,
no.
in a sense, Hindenburg is baiting them to go ahead and sue them in the US.
Yeah, yeah. Except that that Adani might be able to, given the kind of wealth that he has, he might be able to protract proceedings in the US for a
Yeah.
decade. He might be able to pull it for a decade. Hindenburg might not be, unless he has the investors who helped him in the first place come through for him.
But not at this
But
scale. If Adani enters
yeah,
the U.S. court system via his expensive lawyers in New York, I'm sure Hindenburg will begin to run out of money pretty quickly.
it will. But I don't think Hindenburg has shallow pockets.
But not
Hindenburg,
as deep as the Adanis, right?
no, but it
So,
does have investors. Does have investors. But the point again is that in the course of things, Adani will have to open out his dossiers. He'll have to do that. There's no getting away
yeah,
from that.
that's
Okay,
the
and
discovery process. Yes.
and exactly, and he can't. So I
No,
doubt
he
very much.
obviously, yeah, yeah. So
He,
that's one thing. I
oh,
wrote a piece, in fact, about that. That's
uh,
one thing that they will not expose themselves to.
they won't expose him. So he might just take Adani to court in India. Um, But
Yeah, but
he might
it has
take
no
Hindenburg.
standing in India, right?
Sorry,
Hindenburg has no
Hindenburg.
standing in.
No, Hindenburg. Adani might take Hindenburg to court in India.
But
Sorry.
that's of no consequence. How does that?
Well,
They will
it's
not show up
harassment.
there. Huh?
No, it's harassment. He will have to show up there, or one of his people will have to show up there. But then the point is
Why?
that
Okay.
yeah, it could be defamation, could be criminal defamation. Criminal defamation is very onerous in India. You know,
Yeah.
it's very problematic in India. So it could be
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
it could, and in India he can pull it over. He can pull it for a quarter century. If he wants to.
Yeah. My sense is that he's just going to essentially brazen this out.
He will. He will. That's my sense too. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
he has the money to do it. And I'm sure if he bounces back, it will be even a bigger fable for him as a giant corporate guy.
Yeah, except that I don't think he'll be able to bounce back
Oh,
either that fast, either that rapidly, or even completely. And that is not because Indians are holding him to question, or that's because foreign FIs
yeah,
have started investigating him. And they've
right.
started downgrading him.
That's
After
true.
all, I mean, Credit Suisse, Stanchart, and
Citibank,
Barclays, yeah, Deutsche Bank, Barclays.
yeah,
When they come into the picture and they start downgrading Adani, that's huge. That's massive. Internationally, that's massive.
yeah,
And I'm not so sure that he'll be able to pull through Australia now. That might take a walloping.
right.
He might not be able to pull through in Southeast Asia now. That might take a walloping. So
I mean, he's facing problems in Uttar Pradesh.
he's
Forget all those.
exactly, exactly.
But that was a
And
weird turn of events, wasn't that?
that was very weird. That was very weird. But that was also because I think he was far too blatant over there, and there's also internal politics playing over there. The
Indeed.
BJP's own internal politics playing over there.
Yeah,
So the point is, he did manage to get the Bangladesh government to agree to the after the recent frisson, where the Bangladesh government wanted Adani to review the contract, the electricity contract, and think about the monies involved. Review the monies involved. And Adani said no, he won't be doing anything of the kind. So he did manage to walk through there, but he might
right.
not be able to do that. He might not be able to do that in the rest of the world. You
True,
know.
yeah. With the Adani Group meltdown now wiping off $110 billion, the story seems to have become much bigger than just one company. What are the implications for India and its economy?
You're asking me?
Yeah,
Well, it's a big, it's a very large company actually, with 17 point something $1 trillion, trillion rupees net worth, which comes to about $218 billion, the value of the company, value of the group.
right.
So when something goes wrong in a company, in a group as large as that, it is bound to have impact on the national economy. Apart from that, it has borrowed a lot of funds, and these run into very large amounts. Actually, runs into billions of dollars, uh, both internationally as well as in India.
Right.
Uh, the major exposure is that of LIC, that is Life Insurance Corporation of India. So that will have a significant impact, especially on uh, uh, the uh, on the people who buy the who are insuring with it actually.
Right.
So it will affect. I don't know how it will affect their premium actually, but uh, its valuation of the corpus will certainly be affected.
But what does it tell
So,
you about India's much ballyhooed corporate world that one upstart activist short seller with perhaps five people on its staff can bring a giant down to its knees? I'm baffled by this.
well, you see, this whole uh, expose has to be divided in two parts. One is the legitimate activities, which, if you can call that, actually, that is the listed companies of Adanis, and then there is the uh, the shell companies, which has raised billions of dollars. Nobody knows the source of it, actually, and that could be that could, it could be lead to investigations. I mean, it could lead to global kind of interest in looking at what is the source of these funds. Are they from proper activities? Who is investing actually? What are the kind of people in? Are these people? Are these legitimate investments which are coming into this shell companies? From the look of it, it doesn't seem so, because these are just shell companies, with no staff, no address, no phone numbers. Just one person is coordinating that, actually, more or less. That is the elder brother of Adani, and everything is mysterious about that, and
Right,
that raises lots of suspicions.
right.
And will it lead to, uh, especially uh, US and the Western countries would like to know where these funds are coming from, actually, because uh, it could be coming from illegitimate sources, which could have a serious impact. Se- I mean, security risk. You know.
Right.
So, so these are that is one part of that. The other part, as far as the legitimate part business is concerned, which is listed in India, from what I understand, their long-term risk factor is the net. I mean, which is measured uh, uh, in terms of uh, net worth, uh, debt to debt to net worth
Ratio.
ratio. That is quite comfortable at 1.2, actually. You see.
Yeah.
So that long-term risk is doesn't seem to be that. Uh, if you are looking at the fundamentals, I'm talking
Right.
about the
Right.
fundamentals purely, actually. But again, you see, the net worth itself is inflated,
Right.
because the prices of the value of the the debt which they have raised is against there is a significant amount of debt which they have raised is by pledging the shares, promoter shares, actually, you see.
Right.
So that raises certain issues, actually, you see,
You
because
know, I
uh,
go ahead. Sorry, go
but,
ahead.
but the real issue is their working capital requirement. And out of seven companies, five companies have a ratio of current ratio uh, of below one. So that should be worrying for them, because now they are not able to raise margin money, actually, because no the banks, especially the international banks, have begun to uh, have started have, have one by one, they have stopped accepting. They are stopping accepting their accepting the bonds as collateral.
Right. Right.
So that margin, they are not accepting it actually.
You know,
So that
I'm extremely baffled. If you're going to pull say, an alleged scam of this order that people are talking about, why wouldn't you have shell companies that look professional, have proper staff, even if it means investing some extra money? At least it should look professional. Why just have a small office which is locked? To me, if you're a scamster, it
hmm.
demands some measure of imagination too, right?
Yeah, the scamsters. I mean, in India, we have had several scammers actually who have had a very large network of scams. Uh, you know, uh, Operations
Right.
across India. And for example, Daud. Okay,
Right.
so Daud. They say that he used to operate his organization like corporate organizations,
Right.
business development department, and all those kind of things actually, which they had their own names, but
Sure.
basically, their own regional managers. And so what you are saying makes sense, but
No, I'm just thinking, say, if I'm putting on, say, a criminal hat, uh,
yeah,
I should know that if I'm going to be exposed, at least the operation should look grand enough for a company which is so rich on paper, at least.
that's
Uh,
right.
I'm thinking like a twisted mind just for the heck of it. Anyway,
Yeah.
stock manipulation, accounting fraud, tax dodging, overvaluation, while all repugnant and even criminal, have always been part of India's corporate culture. Why has this become so destructive for the Adani Group?
Well, their proximity to the powers that be, you know, as we were discussing, uh, that uh, most of the companies on these, for example, transfer pricing, stock manipulations, and uh, you know, violation of SEBI rules and whatever you know. So these are tax. Then uh, so these are things which almost most of the Indian corporate indulges. But then you have to look at it, bifurcate the corporate into two parts. One is the influential part, actually, the corporate which is influential, which is the large corporates with significant influence, actually, with the powers that be. And there are smaller fries actually in this business. uh, so they indulge. The smaller ones are the activities of the larger ones are more likely to be overlooked by the powers that be, actually,
Right.
because of their connections and various things, you see. And there they have a very wide network. All they try to cover most of the areas.
Mhm.
They have public affairs departments. They have public lobbying, uh, 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 you know, uh, depart this setups in
Right.
Delhi, and also at the local levels, at the regulatory authorities levels, and all sort of things. Now, the smaller ones, actually, they are more in terms of you know uh, 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 a small time kind of operations. They try to do the same things as long as they're not caught. They they uh, they benefit from it. But the day they are caught, actually,
Right.
they are fined, and then that's how it goes on.
Yeah. In the midst of all this, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman says that Indian stock markets are very well regulated. What is your sense?
Regulated, and still the scams do surface, in spite of the regulations. Regulated with digitization, the mon- with digitization, it has become comparatively easier to track.
Yeah,
So that is a very meticulously prepared report, and
it is.
also the Indian there's a business paper. It's a very reputed business paper which comes. It's a business paper. It's a daily actually, which belongs to Hindu group,
Mhm.
South-based Hindu
Right.
publication group actually. And that has said that the kind of valuation of the Adani enterprise, which is a holding company, basic more or less actually, at 168 price to equity ratio. I mean, this kind of valuation only given the nature of their businesses, they would not get more than 15 valuation. But 168, that is a kind of valuation. Very highly innovative IT companies like Facebook's and
Right.
Amazon, their whole business model is very innovative and very extensive in
Yeah.
its reach.
Yeah.
That those are the kind of companies which get. But
Not
168,
applicable to legacy old world economy companies like
yeah,
Adani.
that's it. Today, who knows of GE actually? You see,
Right. Right.
it is
You
still
know.
there, but I mean, it's not what it used to be 20 years back actually. Who knows Jack Welch?
Right. True.
Okay,
I
today
mean, at
everybody.
one point he was the man. Now nobody cares about that.
That's right. His
Yeah.
school of business. So
Right.
they were the icons of the time, but today things are
Not
different.
anymore. Yes.
You cannot, and then again in his whole business model, there is no cash cow, unlike Ambani's.
Yeah.
In Ambani's business, their refinery business is a huge cash cow actually,
Right.
on the basis of which they can support their diversification and raise also a lot of money actually. You see,
Right.
people are more confident. You see,
Yeah. Just
so
last couple of things, Mr. Modak. One is, how do you look at the cancellation of the follow-on public offering? If they initially said it's on moral grounds, and then it began to seem as if there was some deeper malaise. What is your personal feeling about that?
well, morality is basically is the first casualty when you get into businesses.
Yeah.
you know, and you cannot become. Oh, you see, if you see the background of most of the groups, including I'm talking about in US also, uh, many of the companies which have grown up, their initial capital came uh, from uh, from uh, uh, exporting opium.
Right.
Uh, Angus Deaton, the Nobel laureate, actually, I think about 6 or 7 years back, he got an economics Nobel Prize, actually. He has written a book called Death of Despair and
Okay.
the future of neoliberal capitalism, actually. In that book, he has extensively looked at the various things actually. See. So, many in many of Indian, that of course is not mentioned in there, but one Professor Tripathi of IIM, who
Mhm.
had done research several years ago, so he had showed that the initial capital of uh, most of the big business houses came from opium exports, actually. You see. Okay. And even the wars were fought because Chinese emperor was refusing to allow them to sell.
Right.
It was having bad effect on the population, and there were wars during the 19th century there, if you see. So companies like, I mean, the investment houses like Jardine, Fleming, and all those, actually they came from that kind of um, that was a source of capital. And it has been the same also to some extent, actually. And some of them have also been, for example, Angus Deaton has said that some of them have after earning their wealth in this way, they've also gone out and set up some great centers of learning, like Harvard. They've contributed to great centers of learnings
Right.
by giving corpus, to the leading universities, or the New York Museum and those kind of thing, actually.
Right.
So this is the background. So morality and all that, actually that starts to an extent. It does not affect the business. That is fine.
Right.
But when the then it's a very flexible thing, actually.